Ms. Adkins, and welcome Mr. Miller.
Council members. Tonight, Tom Miller, President of National Research Centre, is here from Colorado to present the results of the 2014 City of Rockville Community Survey. You will recall when Dr. Miller was here to present the 2014 survey template to the Mayor and Council in September 2014, one of the objectives we had for this survey was to increase the level of participation among city residents. In an effort to accomplish this, we shortened the survey from 5 to 4 pages and increased white space to make it easier to complete. We added an online option, and we increased outreach to the community about the survey. I'm pleased to share that we were successful in meeting this objective. For the 2014 survey, we increased our response rate from 36 to 41% and received responses from 792 out of a random sample of 2,000 residents. You received some preliminary information on the survey results on the agenda item that you received for tonight's meeting. Overall, the results of the survey are positive. City residents once again gave high marks for city programs and services. Tonight, Dr. Miller will speak in more detail about the results, including trend line over the years and the city's comparison to national benchmark data. Dr. Tom Miller.
Welcome, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Louise. And I'm so pleased to be here. I know that if I want to have good weather, this is the place to come to.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to take full responsibility for the change in the weather, since often there's an issue about the messenger who's either shot or given credit, so I'll take credit for the weather. Louise did an excellent job in the written summary that you already have, and I'm hoping tonight there'll be an opportunity for you, Mayor and Council, and staff, if that's appropriate, to ask questions as we go through this. You don't need to wait till the end. I do want to say, in terms of the use of this survey, the trends have been extremely stable here in Rockville over the course of the many iterations since 2001. And rather than be concerned that, oh, they're so stable, why do we need to do them? I would say that the stability of a trend line is a huge asset, because when you have deviations from a very stable trend line, then you have more evidence that there is something going on that needs to be explored, or that needs to be understood, or needs to be acted upon. So the fact that you have invested in this trend line and that you have a very stable set of responses, not for every single item that we've identified and tested here, but for many of them, more stable than we see in lots of places. It's an indication that from year to year we are getting a good random representative sample, and that there is an opportunity for all of us to learn from this even more when there are deviations from the trend line. So that's a little bit of background that I wanted to share, because it's a perspective I see when I take a look at these trends going back to 2001. So in terms of the survey methods, if we could go on here, Louise already mentioned the success that we've had in turning around that response rate. And I have to say that at the same time we are seeing response rates drop all across the country. The fact that we have found a way, at least for now, to turn around that trend line is an extremely positive item. Now, we had introduced a fourth contact. We've had 3 contacts as sort of the standard way of collecting data. We introduced a fourth contact in 2007. We continued with that, and then not only did we shorten the survey, but that outreach that was intensified. I think between those 2 items, we were able to make that change that we all had hoped would be made. The respondents were responding in October of 2014. They had the opportunity to respond not only by mail but online. We had 65 folks who responded online. There were several folks who had responded in another language than English. Which is particularly good. You have the excellent services of Dragon Bridge, that have helped make sure that the outreach happens in many languages. And there's been great success in that regard too. Among the respondents, even though we had roughly just under 40 that came back in a different language, among the respondents, 42%, I believe, speak a language other than English as their primary language at home. So that's an extremely positive finding in terms of the diversity of who's participating in this. So in the next slide, you can see this is just a way for us to describe these percentages without talking about percentages all the time. It's some number of folks out of 10 people, which is really easily translated into a percent, and it's a nice visual way of showing these findings. So on some of these slides, maybe many of them, you'll see that graphic. In terms of the overall finding in the next slide, you'll see that where we could compare results on questions that were the same or extremely similar, asked here and in other parts of this country, most of the results here were better than what we see in other places. Now, there were a few where they were about the same or somewhat less, and those are listed here. We have arranged these results along the lines of the 8 critical success factors that you have identified. In fact, the full report is written around those 8 factors. So tonight there'll be just a brief summary in accordance with that outline. What I like about what you do with these survey results is that you link them to your strategic vision. So having 8 key factors for your community and then bringing in the metrics that you identify here, and not just here, but at least tonight we're talking about the survey. When we talk about the survey, we're talking about a metric that's different than performance metrics or service metrics. These are outcome measures, generally speaking. Not always, but usually we're talking about the reason you have identified a certain number of police officers has to do with safety, and the reason you have identified enhancing code enforcement is so that people will identify code enforcement as being done in a way that is the way they want it. So this is an opportunity now to hear from residents to see how well you've done with regard to these policies and programs that you have in place. So let's take a look first at the effective city service delivery. And here we can see 9 out of 10 residents giving excellent or good ratings to many of these services. That there were 27 services that were evaluated, and 22 of those were above comparisons. That is other places around the country where these questions were asked and these services are provided for were about the same, and one was below, which was, in this case, police services. But crime prevention was on the rise and is above national benchmark as well.
Say that last sentence again.
Crime prevention
Oh, is on, yeah.
is, yes, it's above the national benchmark, and it has improved since the last iteration.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear that word.
No, that's fine. The next slide has to do with something we call key driver analysis, which is like a conundrum for everybody, and not just in this city, but it's a challenge, I think, sometimes to appreciate what clues a key driver analysis can provide. And I want to emphasize that this is a way of trying to get at, through something other than a causal experiment, a way to understand the kinds of things that you do that have an influence or could have an influence on the overall representation of how people feel about services. So what we do is, in the next slide, do we have on the next slide, Louise, no, let's go back then. We look at the relationship between how people evaluate each of the services and how they evaluate overall city services. So that, in this case, when people give higher ratings to police services, they tend to give higher ratings to overall services. And when they give lower ratings to police services, they give lower ratings to overall services. Same is true for the city website. So there is, these I think should be identified and understood as clues for you to say, well, if we provide services that people really admire with regard to the police, they're more likely going to think highly of us overall in terms of service delivery. And same thing about the website. That doesn't mean they're causally connected, but it's a way to be thinking about it. Thanks. So in the next slide, we take a look at the interaction folks have had with your employees. These are very positive. They're higher than benchmark comparisons. And about half of all of your residents have had an interaction with a staff member here. That's been fairly stable, and in fact, more stable than we see in many places. In fact, the percentage of folks who have direct contact with city employees in many other places is going down as there is more and more solutions are provided through the websites or other social media. So this could be a clue for us when we look later at website use as to why there might be not such a strong use in the website, because people are getting their questions answered here. Clues again. In the next factor, overall good governance, we ask questions about how folks feel about overall performance, pleased with the direction that the city is taking. So 6 out of 10 of your residents give excellent or good ratings to this. These are higher than other places. It's not easy to get high ratings in this arena, and even though this rating is lower than a rating you might see for overall quality of life in a community, this is a kind of rating that we don't see in a lot of places. So this is higher than you see in most places, even though local government is preferred in terms of levels of government to state or federal. This is the kind of question that doesn't get 90% of the folks saying excellent or good. So 60% is a very high percent. In the next category, we have livable neighborhoods, and here we asked about overall quality of life, place to raise kids, quality of neighborhood, place to retire, and you can see that's where you get 9 out of 10 people. Not everywhere, of course, so this is very high, higher than other places, and very positive. And as a place to raise children, higher since 2001, and that's what that arrow refers to. So while your report often emphasizes the difference between the last iteration of the survey and this one, I would commend you to look at the changes over this 14-year period, because there have been more, and almost all of them are positive. I think they all are positive, all those changes from 2001 to 2014 in this community. As a place to retire, there were still 6 in 10 folks give a positive rating, but that's been steady, and it's not as strong as we see in other places. So in terms of next slide, we ask people why they live here, and these are the top 3 reasons, and the bottom 3 reasons that people choose to come here. Other reasons have to do with public transportation and schools, being close to DC, and being family friendly. In the next slide, we asked about the environment, and the overall appearance of Rockville has improved since 2001 in terms of the ratings of residents. All of these are above benchmark comparison, except for Rockville's natural environment, which was similar. And in terms of this question on the quality of the environment and sustainability initiatives, there we had 3 and 4, close to 8 and 10 folks giving positive ratings, but I have to say that about 40% of the residents didn't know in terms of answering this question. I think one of the difficult things is the part of this question where we're asking about sustainability initiatives. I think that's a little bit inside, if you will. We might want to think about that for next time. We asked about health and wellness, and here we have 8 and 10 folks who are rating the opportunities for health and wellness positive here, and all their relatives are running there, it looks like. And we've asked this for the first time, and that was much above the benchmark comparisons. In terms of public safety, there are very high percentages of folks who are giving positive ratings to safety in their neighborhood during the day and business area in the daytime. In your neighborhood after dark and crossing the street, which has to do with traffic. Business area after dark, those things are moving up. But in terms of the business area in Rockville after dark, that was below other places at 63%, giving a very or reasonably safe rating. Affordable housing, not a surprise to you, I know, is a difficult thing in an attractive, expensive community, and residents note that. There is a significant amount of housing stress as defined by the federal government. About half of your residents are paying more than 30% of their monthly household income to rent or mortgage payments, and that's noted here in the response. The quality of new development since 2001 is up, so people are appreciating what's happening in terms of development here in that respect. Fiscal responsibility is another one of your key factors, and when we ask people about the value of the services they receive for the taxes that they pay, you get a positive response much above what we see in other places. And this is another one of those questions like governance, where it's hard to get 9 out of 10 people. So getting 6 out of 10 people on average is a very high rating, higher than we see in most other places. With regard to the city budget process, we haven't asked this question before, but I have to say from my own experience that it's very hard to get people involved in the budget process. Back when I was in city government, all the meetings we had on the budget, and there were many of them every budget cycle, they were attended more by staff than they were by the public. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, but to get people to understand and be able to respond knowledgeably about that the process is open and understandable is a difficult thing. 40% of the folks said that they neither agreed nor disagreed. This was an agreement scale, and 37% didn't know. So the fact that those folks who did know and had something to say about it were positive, that's good to know and useful. In terms of planning, we asked about ease of travel, and here you can see that ease of travel by car, walking, and bike have improved since 2001. I think that's remarkable and important because it's not like density is going away. So even under circumstances when things are, when the population is growing and you're having more people give better ratings, that's very positive. These ratings are above the benchmark. Ease of walking is similar to the benchmark. And the movement's in the right direction. In terms of citizen or community engagement, we asked about the city welcoming citizen involvement and got 3 in 4 people practically saying that they agree with that, when only about half say that the city listens to its residents. I think that's not untypical, although we don't have that, I don't have a lot of empirical evidence about that, but my experience is that to listen to a council or to be heard by a council might be interpreted as, did they do what I asked them to do? That's different than just saying that you've listened. Even so, these ratings are much above other communities where we've asked these questions. We don't have a benchmark about rating the quality of the opportunities to be heard, but there you have 7 in 10 people giving a positive rating. Most ratings of community participation are high, and you can see here that folks using a Rockville park has increased, using a rec center has increased, and the use of parks and rec centers are above benchmark, but the use of rec programs is below benchmark. I'm not sure I can tell you why, but you could probably either know that off the top of your head or have some ideas about how to investigate that further and what, if anything, you might want to do with regard to that. We asked questions about the website. Quality ratings are very high, higher than we see in other places. and all these aspects of the website are highly rated and highly rated in comparison to other places. So I kind of alluded to this before because we also see that fewer people have used the website in the past 12 months compared to that same question asked in 2012. And while I don't have a strong answer to why that is, the suspicion has to do with the fact that the folks are getting a lot of their questions answered and still expect to get their questions answered on the telephone or coming in, and they get very good service according to the service ratings. This could be a blip, so I wouldn't, sometimes there's watchful waiting that makes more sense than actually jumping ahead and doing anything about it. And so if I were in IT, I don't think I would worry about this at the moment. The folks who do use the website are more on social media as well, as we've looked at it on cross-tabulations. In the next slide, we can see how people want to be communicated with, and the most preferred are the ones that have been over a period of time. Rockville Reports is still very high, the website high and improving or going up in terms of percentages. The social networking is going up, but that's towards the bottom where we find the Rockville channel. So these improvements or increases are since last iteration, which was 2012, not going back to 2001, because sometimes there wasn't much in social media to ask about in 2001. In terms of economic development, quality of businesses and service establishments were much above benchmark, 8 and 10 folks giving positive ratings there. With regard to commercial improvements, 7 and 10, and this has improved since 2001 in terms of what people see with regard to commercial development here. Under stewardship of the infrastructure, these services get very high ratings, higher than the national average, higher than other communities. Drinking water quality has improved noticeably since 2001. I don't know. Do you know why that is? I think, and I mostly ask rhetorically, but it's the kind of question that I think it's useful to ask for any of these trends that we see. Or any of the results that we see. Why are these this good? Why are these moving in a direction we like? Why are we below the benchmark in some of these places? Those are the things that a survey like this should stimulate for you and staff. And even the street lighting in neighborhoods, which is the lowest rated in terms of infrastructure, that's much above benchmark, much better. We ask people what their priorities are for the community going forward, and the top priorities do have to do with infrastructure, traffic, and crime prevention, public safety. So if I could summarize in the last slide, we've talked about the quality of life. Rockville is a place to raise children, the direction of the community, the overall service quality ratings, and the service that your employees give to residents through customer service. The appearance of the community kind of relates to this sense of community, and the acceptance of people of diverse backgrounds and opportunities for cultural events. These are very positive here. I guess I would add another, which is not up here, and that has to do with governance, to see that folks really do appreciate the direction that the community is moving and the value that they get for the taxes that they pay. That's not something that's typical, and you've done very well in that regard. With regard to opportunities, public safety and ratings of police, affordable housing, which you know about, I think those are the main things, and I think I would leave my summary at that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this. These are great numbers. I really appreciate that the city has invested in this survey for as long as it has, because it does give us just a real tangible sense of how we're doing in a lot of different areas. One thing that jumped out at me in the results was police, and I think it was literally red flagged on the sheet you gave us. But I was having a little trouble finding the individual indicators that drove the idea that, you know, overall City of Rockville police services were lower than the benchmark. Is there, where did you get those numbers from, and what, did you have any sense of what was driving that?
Well, it's simpler probably than it might seem in that that rating comes from a simple question: how do you rate your police services? We also ask, how do you rate overall safety in different parts of the community, day and night? So those results just come from those questions. I would say that at the same time that several of those are below comparison areas, we shouldn't forget that a vast majority of people say that they feel safe, very safe, or reasonably safe. It's just an opportunity for you to say to yourselves, is there something that could be done? Or I guess maybe the first question is to answer Councilmember Moore's question. Why did this happen? Why is this happening? May just be a quirk of this particular period of time. It could be a blip in a trend, but I think it's been fairly stable, and I think the question would be back to the community: what are those key factors that you look to make you feel safe in a downtown at night, or even in your neighborhood at night? What are the things that matter to you? Because it's not necessarily crime, you know? I mean, sometimes it's lighting, and sometimes it's the visibility of police officers, and sometimes it's the way traffic moves and how active the neighborhood is with people out on the street to make people feel safe. So there are lots of possible solutions, but the first question is the right question you've asked, Councilmember Moore: what causes people to give ratings like this?
Okay. All right, thank you. That's the one thing. This is came up a little bit earlier, but I was struck by the numbers on folks who speak a language other than English in their homes. It was, I think, 42% speak a language other than English, and the rest speak only English. And you had a breakdown of what they actually are. 29% it's Spanish, and 30% it's Chinese. And the one that got me, everything else was, you know, Persian, Vietnamese, Russian, Korean. They were all around 2 to 5%, but then 27% other, which is, you know, which was huge, right? Because it's like, that means that, you know, we have a fairly extensive list here, and hopefully we're catching the largest ones, and still 27% of the languages we're not asking about at all. I mean, I think it speaks to the strength of of the diversity of our community. But I was surprised to see these, kind of pleased to see these. But I was wondering, is there a thought? Can we try to break out that 27% in the future? Is there an easy way to do that?
I think we would have to ask a question at greater length. So it can be done. It just takes up a little significant territory on a fairly small piece of real estate here. But one clue you could get is to look at the census data, because it turns out that the census shows it's about 42%. I think it's the American Community Survey, so the most recent might have been 2013. 42% of folks speak another language other than English as their primary at home. I think what's great is that even those folks participated in this survey that's mostly English, although we had many more people calling in, and a significantly larger number, and this wasn't a huge number, but like 3 times the number who responded in another language. But the fact that there's such high education here, I think, that speaking another language than English doesn't inhibit people from answering a survey in English.
Thank you.
Terrific. Councilmember Feinberg.
Thank you very much. One of the things that jumped out at me was among the resident priorities maintain public infrastructure that were deemed most important. And I have to wonder if there's some multiple things going on, because we live in an area where the public infrastructure, some of it is controlled by Rockville, some by the county, some by the state. There's so many state roads that I have to wonder, when people are filling that out, if what they're thinking about, it could be things far greater than are within Rockville's jurisdiction. So that was one comment. And the other one that struck me was on page A19 and the survey respondent profile, for us to think about how many years have you lived in Rockville? And 5 years or less, combining the categories, was approximately 40%. And I thought that's very telling as a community, and in terms of what we focus on, how do we integrate and acculturate new folks into what is Rockville, what do we provide, how do they learn about services. Clearly we have the website and Rockville reports, but how can we be more welcoming to engage those new folks coming into the city? And so I thought those numbers were pretty interesting.
Great, thank you. Other comments or thoughts? Like Councilmember Moore, the police jumped out at me as well. I wonder if you have any thoughts on the national events and whether any of those events subconsciously or consciously were included in this. I will say as a caveat, in the 5 years that I've served on this body, I could count on one hand the number of negative comments that I've heard about our police generally, and most recently I've heard nothing but good things. And so I'm wondering where this is coming from and if you have suggestions.
Well, I don't think that the absolute rating of the police has gone down. Now, Louise, you might be able to correct me on that if I'm wrong. That instead there has been sort of a trend that's been stable going back to 2001. So in that respect, if that's right, then it's unlikely that there have been current events that would have driven people's ratings down. I would say that there's no question that current events do have an influence on people. And perhaps the rating would have been even higher had they not been some of these concerns that we have read about or participated in and know about. So I think it's fair not only with regard to the police rating as it relates to national events, but other kinds of national events and certainly local events. And of course, the sniper event we think had a huge influence here. I would say with regard to why folks might not give higher ratings, and once again, I want to say that the ratings, the vast majority of people are giving positive ratings to police and to their safety. But why they're not even more? Why are some folks saying reasonably safe instead of very safe, or neither, somewhat safe rather than reasonably safe? In terms of answering your question, Mayor, I would convene some folks to talk to them about what public safety means and what are the things that matter to them and how they define safety and what it is that is causing them to feel less than very safe, or what they think might cause someone to feel less than very safe. Because, as I said earlier, it isn't necessarily that any sworn officer has done anything bad. It's just, some people might have different expectations that have to do with some of those other things that I mentioned earlier.
Correct. Thank you. And I was going to add in there that, when you read the comments, there are a couple specific things, and we know from testimonies given to us that there are certain communities that are struggling with certain issues, and I think that can weigh heavily on people's minds. But I'm reminded that in previous years, when the website got low marks, we gave an infusion, a large infusion to that, to try to rectify that situation. And it may be that in a city where the population increases dramatically during the daytime, that we need to look at increasing the number of police so that we do have more presence, if that's part of people's concern. I think of all the ways that we can help make a difference. Councilmember Feinberg.
Yeah, and as you are both discussing it, I'm wondering, is the perception dealing with, if we could ask, where do you feel unsafe? For example, is it more around metro stations as opposed to in your neighborhoods? Is it more in parking garages as opposed to neighbors? Because sometimes those are two specific places where people feel less safe, and it's that perception of not being safe as opposed to not being safe. Big difference.
Absolutely. And in fact, we haven't seen terrific correlations between real crime rates and people's feelings of safety.
That's right. It's a perception, too.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore, did I see your hand?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had trouble finding the question when I was going through this earlier, but I did actually find this specific question. And to put it in context, the overall City of Rockville Police Services, 22% rated excellent, 54% rated good. So that's 76%,
Exactly.
which is not as alarming
Not
as
bad.
I thought. So it's actually even a little bit higher than the website, which also gets very good marks. I just wanted to throw that out there. That there's not it may be a little bit lower than our benchmarks, but doesn't appear to be a crisis of confidence in our police department.
Right. I would agree with you, Councilmember Moore. I think it's just the concern, as you highlighted, with the red spotlight on it. It gives people the maybe erroneous impression that we've got an issue. I don't think we do have an issue. But I do think you give a great suggestion about convening a discussion and see if people are, although we do know in some communities, one in particular, who has asked us for more resources and more lighting and things. And I think that can play a big role. So just a technical question. I see that the report was done in January. Was there a draft that was presented to the city first and then this final, or did it just take a while to get on our calendar?
I
We had a
don't know.
draft late in January, and actually, Tom, you were out most of February
Yes,
and
I
not
was.
available.
Well, that's
And
okay. You're allowed to be
That's why
out.
we're meeting tonight.
Oh, thank you.
that's what I
right,
was
Is
I
that what
was.
you wanted?
Yeah, thank you.
Tom was not available. This was his first date.
That's okay. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you all.
Terrific.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very
Always
much.
good to meet with you. Thank you.
Ms. Adkins, maybe going forward for the next survey, as Councilmember Moore suggested, maybe, or I'm sorry, Councilmember Feinberg, maybe those certain questions could be more specific to help us. And my thought about Councilmember Moore was, as you were discussing a couple weeks ago, an idea about the gray and red brick courthouses, as we look to see what we're going to do in downtown of the city, we need to keep in mind that dearth of activity, and to make sure that we keep Rockville's core area alive after 5 and all those things that we were talking about, and that's a great way to do it. So going forward, I think we can bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, I agree for next time.
Thank you.